This is this is from a company called Left Untied,
Okay.
and I don't know. I think they just kind of got a hold of the Florida Project and fell in love with it. And this is actually one of my favorite scenes is Willem Dafoe, and he lights a cigarette
Oh, that's
in
so beautiful. That
the
scene was
of
so
the
beautiful.
motel. Like one of my favorite scenes.
That was a beautiful shot.
But yeah,
That's
this is
cool.
my prop that I had to bring.
I love it. Thank you. Yes, man. I love that you brought that, man. That's perfect. That's perfect. So yeah, man. I mean, it's such a beautifully shot film. You know, Sean makes great work. This was this your first time working with him? And again, just where did you get into the situation, and kind of how did you? What was the process that you watched kind of unfold?
Yeah. So after working on the Midnight Special and loving with Jeff Nichols and making my own short film called Frog, that is when I moved out to Los Angeles and started working for a finance and production company called June Pictures. And they were a startup. So literally we found an office off of Wilshire Boulevard and it was empty. And like many times before, I put on my office coordinator hat and I outfitted the place with everything from, internet to furniture and, got it all set up. And then we were a finance company in LA,
Wow,
a
that's
little
beautiful.
studio boutique. Alex Sachs was the CEO of the company and the financier. His name was Andrew Duncan. The company no longer exists, but at the time we produced 7, maybe 8 feature films, one of which was a documentary. And so Alex Sachs was a former packaging agent over at ICM, and Sean Baker has representation at ICM. And so there was a little bit of just the Hollywood agency game of, I have this material, I have this money, I have this financier, let's all get together.
Gotcha.
And so Alex Sachs had really built the slate of films for June Pictures before I ever walked into the door. So it was like, hey, you're signing on to work for this company. We have like 4 feature films. And the Florida Project was one of them. And the story goes that June Pictures basically purchased the Florida Project off of a napkin. Some idea that Sean wrote down, one night at dinner, and they were like, yes, whatever you want to do, let's do it.
Let's do that.
And Alex Sachs and Andrew Duncan had seen Tangerine and Starlet and were just really taken by Sean Baker, like so many of us are, just as a human. Like he's just very captivating in the way that he thinks, and the contrast that he's able to hold in the same space is really cool. And for him, it really came from a place of like, he was very inspired by the original Little Rascals, like from the 20s and 30s. Because it's this whole idea of children and growing up and having a childhood that's like playful and fun, but set against the Great Depression. And so he really loved this idea of like this childlike oblivion and playfulness in the midst of just world and adult shit going down,
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's cool. I love that. I mean, because that's how it's able to sort of peer into the window of this very specific lifestyle. I was wondering where that idea came from, because of course, I'm like a degree away from poverty most of my life. I've been kind of circled away from it, but I still right around it, and I'm very familiar with friends and family that had to live out of motels and hotels. Familiar with kids having to be around very adult stuff and having to be. But what's interesting and what I love about the film is that they are completely oblivious to what's really happening, and we're kind of caught in their world, and we see and we know and we kind of understand the bigger things that are happening. Even when the scene when the kids are out playing and the guy, the molester, who he's insinuated to be, he comes walking in, and it's they're completely unaware of that situation. But
Right.
unfortunately, if you are a child that is whose parent is living in and out of a motel, they don't have time to watch you because they're dealing with the life of basically having to live out of a motel, or or there's a generational curse there where I wasn't. I was able to go out and play around or whatever. I was fine, so they'll be fine. So they're exposed to this situation in the first place. But then also these guardian angels, Bobby, that are around to help them and take care of that situation. But all the while they're just outside playing, right? But it's so awesome that again that he was able to peer into that window, and I was curious as to what that was. That kind
I
of
also
sparked
want
that
to
off.
give a shout out to his co-writer Chris Burgosh, and Sean speaks of him a lot when he talks about the origination of this idea, because as you know, you kind of mentioned your friend earlier who you share writing and you kind of do this back and forth and here's this idea, and those relationships are so invaluable, they're so eternal, and sometimes things get manifested through them, you know, which is really beautiful. So these guys kind of had that same relationship, and Chris grew up in that area and just kind of seeing that disconnect between Disney, the happiest place on earth, kind of happening with after 2008, the economic recession and the housing crisis that followed. I think that he was just kind of seeing things happen directly right on that highway, on that strip of all those budget motels. And so for him, it was just like really fresh experiences. And of course, come to find out, as Sean is making this movie and all this social, just, you know, social and human work is being researched around this, you know, it's a way bigger problem. There's hidden homeless in our country. It's international. You know, this message was so much bigger than just like right outside of Orlando and Disney. It's like such a metaphor for so many things, but especially for just the folks that like you say are unable to focus on these quote unquote finer things in life and luxuries of looking after and spending time with their own children because their basic needs aren't being met, whether through their own circumstances, through systematic issues that are still being worked out. Like there's so many reasons why people end up in these situations. But the fact of the matter is, Sean felt you know, called to, you know, he felt convicted along with Chris to share this story of there's a lot of people living like this, and let's give this group of people that get stigmatized a face. Like they're people.
Find all our content on thenewfilmosophy.com.